In today's video, I want to chat to you guys about when to register a business. My name is Heinrich Huvier. I'm the owner of S Accounting Network, and I've been in the accounting industry since 2008, but also been an entrepreneur since 1993. This video forms part of a business mentoring course. So if you're watching this part of the course, then well done that you got this far. If you're not part of that course, you can go check out. There's a link in the description of this website where you can go download all the videos that's part of this course. But I think registering a business is one of the most debated topics of most accountants is when do you take the leap? And that is what I just want to unpack a little bit with you guys today. Yeah, so I think just before I start, remember to click the video like, remember to hit subscribe, and let me just quickly run through the thought process. Yeah, so when should I register a business? I think that is obviously the question that we're trying to answer. And I think it's probably one of the most asked questions, but it's also the most difficult thing to answer, because I think for every person starting a business, their situation looks different. There's certain things that weighs towards us running as a sole proprietor, certain things that might weigh you to registering a company. And even with companies, there's different types of companies that you can use to run your business in. And that is just what I want to stand still a little bit. You'll see that on my YouTube channel, I've got a whole series there about to starting a business, all you should know. And inside that series, I also recorded 1 or 2 videos where I talk about sole proprietors versus companies, 1 or 2 of the benefits and stuff. So go check out those videos as well. There's some good content there as well that will guide you through the decision-making process of actually when to start a business. Yeah, we're going to look at 1 or 2 practical considerations. And remember that if you're busy watching the mentoring course, I use the analogy of building a house. So remember, when you build a house, you need to decide which foundation you're going to build that house on. If you build a house on clay or that type of stuff, or sandy locations, you have to use a completely different foundation from when you're building a house on rocks, or on sand and stuff. So the same rules apply when you're running a business as well. You must make sure that you're starting from the right foundation. And that is the reason why I want to stand still a little bit of when to register a business. I think that's really important. And then you'll see in the description of this video, I'm going to give you guys a worksheet, like a checklist that you guys can go through with 1 or 2 questions that you can answer yourself. I'm actually going to work through it with you as well, so you can see what it looks like. That will hopefully help you guys decide whether to trade as a sole proprietor or whether you want to register a business itself. So when should I register a business? Just briefly, the different types of ownership structures that you've got. So first one is a sole proprietor, which means that you're just trading in your personal capacity. You don't have anything registered separately. You're going to open up a business, a bank account in your personal name, and you'll see that on all your invoices and stuff, you need to declare, or the people pay that money into your personal account. I would always highly suggest that you use a different bank. So if you're a bank person with Standard Bank, then maybe go open up a separate bank account at FNB, so you can keep all the business related stuff separate from your personal stuff. And then you personally would need to declare that income on your personal tax return. Remember, because you are the business, there's not a separate legal entity. The second one we're going to touch on quickly. If you want to look at that further, remember I've done that video where I compare sole proprietors versus companies. So I dive a bit deeper into that as well. So please go check out that video. There's some good content there. Second one is partnerships. I think in the past 15 years, I think I've worked with about 2 partnerships. So it's not something that is here often. It's a very risky business because you personally link all your personal assets and liabilities to that business operation and to your partner as well. So if he stuffs up on his side of the business, you might end up losing all your assets and stuff as well. So partnerships is not something that is here often. In the past, in the old days, partnerships was popular, but you don't really see it often these days anymore. Private companies, I think there's probably the most known or the most preferred model at the moment that most people use. And I think what's nice about that is if you decide that you want to register a private company, you can have a couple of shareholders, couple of directors in there. So it's probably the most flexible thing that you can use for the most diverse type of businesses at the moment. Trusts, I'm just going to mention it out there that you could trade in a trust. It's a bit risky. It's a little bit of an expensive operation to do, but there's certain situations where there's definitely a benefit of running a business inside a trust. And then obviously at the high end of things is you start looking at public companies. So that's all your listed companies and stuff. But that's probably a little bit further down the line from where you guys are at the moment if you're busy watching this video. But it's just worth noting. So if you're starting a huge international company, public companies is probably the way that you're going to have to go. Yeah. So when should I not register a business? So I think that is the starting point. And if I say register a business, I mean, I'm just talking sole proprietors versus companies. So when not to register a company. So I think if you're experimenting with a new product or service, so if you decide you get this brainwave, you want to start developing this toy or something like that, and you first just want to test it, I would suggest out the bat not to just go and register a company immediately. Remember, once you register that company, you've got certain obligations that you have to comply with. So I think probably just to keep a company open, just all the compliance stuff, you're easily looking between about 5 to 10,000 rand per year that it's going to cost you to keep that company open. So if you decide that you're going to start testing around with 1 or 2 ideas, try something new, try something different, then I would suggest just open up a different bank account with FNB or whatever the case might be, and just do the operation in there just to test it to see whether it's going to be beneficial for you to incur the cost and to get that separate legal entity registered if it's not something that you're going to pursue long term. So I think if you're experimenting with a product or service, then I think that is important. Minimal upfront cost. So I think that is one of the benefits of running as a sole proprietor. You just go to the bank, open up a separate bank account. It's going to cost you 80 Rand per month, probably for the bank charges. And that is the cost. So it's not an expensive thing. If you're working alone, so if you just have a one-man operation, there's definitely a benefit of trading as a sole proprietor as such. We're going to talk about that now, but they're a little bit strict with sole proprietors, so they do scrutinize the expenses quite a bit. I think if you've got a business where you've got very low expenses or minimal expenses, then a sole proprietor might be a good option for you to consider. And then I think if you've got businesses with low turnovers, and I would say that a business, remember that in your personal capacity, or if you're an individual, you only start paying tax once you start earning more than about 96,000 Rand per year, which gives you about 8,000 Rand per month. So if you're starting a business, if you're not employed and you're starting a business, baking muffins or something like that, as soon as your turnover, or as soon as your income is less than 8,000 Rand per month, so if your income was 90,000 Rand for the year, you can open up your tax return, open up a blocky there to say that you earned income 90,000 Rand, put it in there. You won't have any tax liability, no deductions that you have to include there. So then it's straightforward. There's nothing complicated about it. It's straightforward. That's not going to cost you extra cent to do that process. Where as soon as you go over that 8,000 Rand mark, remember, then you're going to start paying tax. The tax rate for individuals then start from 18%. So if you make 100,000 Rand, so the difference between the 90,000 and 100,000, you're going to pay 18% tax on that. And then the more that incomes become, the higher the tax bracket becomes. So then it might be beneficial to start looking at companies because you might be able to get away with lower tax rates inside a company. But also keeping in mind that to run a company, like I said, it's going to cost you between 5 to 10,000 Rand per year minimum. So if your tax liability for the year is only 1,800 Rand, then it doesn't make sense to go register a company which is going to cost you 10,000 Rand per year to manage. So I think that is just one of the things that you would probably have to book a consultation with an accountant and sit with the guy and say, this is what I'm doing, it doesn't make sense. Should I register a company? Must I keep trading as a sole proprietor? I'm not a big fan of sole proprietors, and I'm going to explain to you guys why as well. So let's quickly look at the thing. So I say one of the big disadvantages is that you've got limited growth and limited value as a sole proprietor. So if you've got two companies, let's say, for instance, you're running a business, you've got a 2 million Rand turnover, you're running that business as a sole proprietor versus running the business as a company. Remember, if you start a business, there's two main reasons or two main motivations behind that. The one thing is to generate something that can generate income for you on a monthly basis. But the other part of it that people forget about is that you're actually building an asset, a long-term asset. Remember, if you build a house, you're obviously looking for a place that you can live in on a monthly basis, so you don't need to pay rent and stuff, so you can own your own house. But one day, your intention is either that you're going to sell that property or you're going to rent it out, so that you've got some asset that can generate you some form of income. So if you compare the two structures with each other, if you've got a business as a sole proprietor, 2 million Rand turnover, let's say, for instance, with 1 million Rand worth of assets, then if you're lucky, you might be able to get 1 million or 2 million Rand when you sell that as a sole proprietor. Where if you take that exact same business, put it inside a company, you might be able to get 3 or 4 million Rand as a return one day when you sell the business, because it's something separate from you. The problem is, as sole proprietor, is if you try and sell the business, you're selling yourself. You can't detach that from yourself, so that just makes it a bit more complicated. So my suggestion always is, as soon as you reach that threshold where you're going to start paying tax, look at putting it inside a business structure like a PTY Limited, because you can build something there. You can build an asset that you can take one day to go and sell it. And remember as well that you can always upgrade to a company. So if you start this operation, for instance, you're doing something as a hobby and it's starting to generate income, first start out as a sole proprietor, once this thing start reaching certain thresholds, then I would say that you can always just upgrade to a company. So go register Pty Limited, and then you just get that thing registered. Yeah, so I think that is just a short list, just my personal opinion of when not to register a business, because like I said, the cost is something that you need to consider, and obviously it takes a lot of extra admin to run a company, because remember, you have to, company is a separate legal entity. So for that company, it's got to have its own bank account, own financial statements, own tax returns. So there's a lot of things that you have to do if you have a separate company registered versus if you're trading as a sole proprietor. When should I register business? So here we go. So when I would suggest that you register if you're developing some new product and you need some intellectual property protection. So if it's something completely new and you're scared that people's going to go copy it and stuff, register a company, then get that thing trademarked so that you have the rights to produce that specific thing. I think franchising is really, really difficult to do franchising as a sole proprietor. Most of the places would want you to have a company registered, and that company would then be the one that will be franchising that business. I think partners and shareholders, I think that's really, really important. Partnerships is not something that you see often anymore. So if you do decide, if you've got you and your mate or your brother or mom or dad and you guys are going to start a business together, I would suggest that you go and register a Pty Limited, and then you put both of you up as directors and both of you up as shareholders. That's also really, really important. I think the next one is working with corporates and government. So quite often, if you do government work, corporate work and stuff, it's really difficult to connect with those guys or to apply for those contracts and stuff if you're trading as a sole proprietor, because a sole proprietor is just I would say in their eyes, is probably a lower form of a business. So if you have two contracts, if you, is working for a government department or you're a big corporate and you're looking at two applications for a specific tender or something, and you see this guy's a sole proprietor, this guy's a company, the chances are probably 90% that they're going to choose the company because it is a structured business that they're dealing with and not some individual possibly trying to look at that. And I think probably, yes, worth mentioning it as well. If you go to banks and you're trading as a sole proprietor, for instance, you want to buy a house, they're very, very strict with sole proprietors. You have to produce financial statements for 3 years, plus you have to have like 20% deposits and stuff like that. So they're really, really strict, and people really battle as sole proprietors to get finance for any form of loan. Where with a company, if you've got a company set up, you're director of the company. In that capacity, you're taking your director's salary out of the company, the chances are much more that they're probably going to give you finance because it is structured in a more professional way. Yeah, I talk about it, funding and loans. So I think that's important. So any form of loan, whether it's for business, whether it's personal, whether you want to buy property, if you've got a company, the chances I would say is probably 67% more that they can approve that finance if you've got it structured inside a company. Hiring of employees based on UIF workman compensation labor laws. So I think that's also important. As soon as you start employing people, remember that if you have a separate company, that company is the person or the entity that's employing those people. If you're trading as a sole proprietor, you personally are employing those people. So there's a difference. And if the pawpaw eats the fan, you personally are going to be liable for whatever goes wrong there. But if you've got a company, you've got everything registered, the company will be liable. So there's a big difference between the two. I think importing and exporting as well. So that's also really important. As a sole proprietor, you can do it, but I would highly suggest that you go register a company if you're involved with importing, exporting stuff. And then just the last bullet point, the protection of personal assets. I think if you have a company registered, you only, if you do it right, you would only be held liable for the amount of money that you put into the business. So to a certain degree, you still have a protection of your personal assets from the company itself. Yeah, where shareholders are no partnerships, that is not that relevant. So I think I just wanted to unpack this for you guys and just to give you guys a little bit of background of when it is the best to go register a company or when to trade as a sole proprietor. And together with this, I've got a checklist that I prepared for you guys as well that you can use. The link is in the description of the video. Let me get to it quickly and then I can show quickly what the checklist looks like. Yes, here we go. Yeah, so this checklist, like I say, in the description of the video, you can go download it over there. And it's just a simple checklist that you guys can use. As I said, a simple decision guide for South African entrepreneurs. Before you start formalizing your business, use this worksheet to decide whether you should start as a sole proprietor or go ahead and register a company. So yeah, what stage are you at? Am I still developing the idea? I've made a few sales to test the waters. I'm already working with regular paying clients and I'm applying for funding for tenders. 2, Who are the clients? Who are your clients or customers likely to be? Private individuals, small businesses or freelancers, corporates or government, retail or wholesale buyers. Are you planning to apply for funding, a loan or overdraft within the next 6 to 12 months? If it's yes or no, or possibly, depending on how sales go. Number 4, are you planning to bring a business partner or investor into? No, it's only me. Or yes, I've already got a partner and plan to get one. Not right now, but it is possible. Will you be employing anybody, including freelancers, within the next 6 to 12 months? If it's yes, full-time or part-time employees, yes, contractors or freelancers. No, I'll be doing everything myself for now. Are you concerned about protecting yourself legally or financially if something goes wrong? Yes. My business could face liability or risk, or no, it's a fairly low risk for now. 7, is your business idea easy to copy or something entirely new? If it's a new concept, I'm considering about competitors copying it, then I would suggest going the company route and getting a trademark on that. If it's a proven idea, I'm not worried about intellectual property. So if you're a plumber, electrician or something like that, then that is not relevant. Do you expect to earn more than 8,000 Rand a month in profit within the next 6 months? Yes, no, or you're not sure yet. Yeah. So remember that 8,000 Rand per month thing that we were talking about? That is if it's your only source of income. If you're already earning other income, this 8,000 Rand will be added to that income. So if you're already earning your salary, then remember there's going to be a tax liability. Yeah, so just to interpret your results, mostly sole proprietor. If most of your answers are on the early leverage stages, no staff, no income, private customers, likely to start up as a sole proprietor, keep it lean while you validate your idea. Mostly registered company. If you're working with partners, targeting corporates, applying for funding, facing legal financial risk, it's time to register your private company from the start. Tip: you can always start as a sole proprietor and switch later, but some situations require a structured format. When in doubt, speak to your business advisor or accountant. Yes. So hopefully in this video, I've given you guys a couple of pointers that you can work with when it's worth it to register a company, or whether it's worth it to keep on trading as a sole proprietor. Remember to give the video a like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you guys for the next video. Thanks for watching.